alayhi wa salam, the slave servant messenger, and seal of all the prophets. Peace be upon the prophet, upon his descendants, upon his companions, and upon the righteous throughout the world. And peace be unto you. Assalamu alaikum. Imam A.K, pray that Allah will bless us with a blessed time of worship, and that He will restore our spirits and forgive us our sins. I want to just focus. I was thinking about this verse and talking about restoring, restoration. See, that's the whole purpose of the Jumu'ah, is that Allah says through Muhammad the Prophet that He'll forgive us for our sins. And these periods of Jumu'ah, there's a point of forgiveness, and that forgiveness is so important for our own development. See, because sometimes people walk around with the burden of guilt. They walk around with the burden of guilt for a very, very long time. That's why Allah says He's all forgiving. Because when you allow the guilt and the wrong and the pain of what you did yesterday to weigh you down and hold you back. That's why over and over again you find He says He's all forgiving, most merciful. He reminds us that there's always room for getting better. And that you can't walk with the emotional or a psychological burden. It's all working in your mind. And people play these stories all over, what happened yesterday and 10 years ago, and they just don't believe that I can be forgiven. They don't believe that I should be forgiven. But Allah clearly tells us that's who He is. He's the forgiver. And when we grab hold of that, we can really grow. I don't care what takes place, as a human being, there's always room for improvement. There's always room for getting better. And when you know that Allah says He'll forgive you, that He's not going to hold you to what you did, that's a blessing. So we begin with that kind of ideal of just knowing that Allah tells us He will allow our spirits to be renewed. But I love this verse in the Quran that talks about calls. See, there's all kind of calls in the world. There's a call to war. There's a call to poverty. There's a call to drug addiction. There's a call to gambling. There's so many calls that's distracting human beings. And all these calls pull people from the one who will sustain their lives. And that's the whole mission of Shaitan, to distract you from your real power. Some people think their power is in things. But your real power lies in the relationship that you're working to develop with Allah. So then Shaitan wants to pull you from that relationship, to weaken that relationship. And once that relationship with Allah is weakened, then how you relate to everything else in creation is also weakened. That's why there's so much abuse. You find the people who abuse and harm are those people who really have no connection with it. They don't have a strong relationship with the life giver. Because if they had a strong relationship with the life giver, then that relationship will remind them, I can't do that. That's what it means to be conscious. That's why the whole month of Ramadan was designed to increase this awareness of Allah consciousness, taqwa, which is all about preserving life. So there's all these calls in the world, the call to death. And they're calling people to physical death, but they also calling to people to spiritual death, economic death, financial death, moral death, intellectual death. I mean, just death. All you have to do is look around in society, you see there's so much death amongst people, although these people are physically engaged moving around the world. But internally, they've been really, really robbed of life. So here's the verse in the Quran where it says, to those who responded, it says, our evolver, we have heard the call of one calling us to faith, and we believe. Here's a call to security, because that's what Iman is. Faith is security. We heard the call of one, not calling us to weakness. Here's a call of Muhammad the Prophet ﷺ that is calling us to our real power, which is ultimately seen in the relationship we develop with you, Allah. So we've heard the call. First of all, it begins by stating who is giving the call. It's through Muhammad the Prophet ﷺ, but Allah says he's Rabb. So he says our evolver. We've heard a call. We've heard so many other calls. But there's something different about this call, because this call is awakening us to who we really are. This call is getting us back in touch with natural living, with our nature. We've heard the call, the one calling us to Iman, not to doubt, not to insecurity, but we've heard the call, the one who's calling us to faith. And after hearing the call, they say, and we believe. Then the verse goes on to say, our evolver, forgive us our sins, blot us from us our iniquities, and take to yourself our souls in the company of the righteous. The verse goes on to acts of forgive us our sins. Here's a call that's saying we can do better. Here's a call that says we need structure. That's what Iman is. Iman faith is all about having structure in your life. Because ongoing, there's all these other calls to keep you weak, because when you're weak, then people capitalize on your weakness. That's why we've been talking, since Hajj, we've been talking about the sacredness of life. Because all Hajj displays this sacred human being in this sacred place. Here's a human being who should be revered. When I say revered, here's a human being who should be respected. This is a great life that Allah gave you. And you realize He gave you a great life. You have to work 24/7 to preserve that life, because there are those calls that is calling you, pulling you from Allah and yourself, then you become a self-abuser of the life that Allah has given you. So we've heard the call, the one calling us to Iman, and we believe. Let me turn your attention to another verse in the Quran where Allah talks about, again, the distractions. This first verse says we've heard the call. This second verse talks about, it asks a very powerful question to the human being. Now when you look at all that Allah has provided us in the creation, that you are not lacking in anything, you have access to whatever you want. As an intellectual being, that you can strategize and plan and get what you want, because Allah says in the Quran, that the human being gets nothing but what he strives for. So you got so much at your disposal, and your getting is based on your striving. All right? Now here's the question, directing straight to the human being. Allah says, oh man, oh human being, male and female, what has seduced you from your evolver, the great, the honorable? What has seduced you? See, there's these forces, these calls that's working to skillfully pull you from the relationship you should have with your Rabb. So he says, oh man, male and female, what has seduced you? Back to your Rabb. What has seduced you from the one who's allowing you to graduate in the world? Not just your creator, because your creator creates. But your Rabb is the one that after he creates you, then he develops you. So the question is, oh thinking being, oh rational being, because you should be thinking about this. What's most important to you? All these other calls. What has seduced you from your evolver, the generous, the noble, the great. When you look at all that Allah has given you, you should be strong enough to not allow yourself to be pulled from that relationship. Because when you're pulled from that relationship, then all the forces that are designed to assist you begin to work against you. So the question is, oh human being, what has seduced you from your evolver, the noble, the beneficent, the great? Now last week we talked about the diseases that are in the hearts of the human being. We talked about greed, we talked about hate, we talked about envy, and we talked about jealousy. And we laid out that that's a plan that Shaitan puts in motion to weaken that bond and to get you to bond with other things instead of bonding with Allah. I read one verse in the Quran where Allah says, and violent is man in his love for wealth. When you start to bond with things instead of bonding with Allah, you become an abuser to life. So we talked about the sacredness of life, and we said that the highest expression of this preservation of the great life that Allah gave you is you have to have love coming from your heart. So if you have hate in your heart, hate is a low form of energy that's a destructive force. Hate is not a preserving, an uplifting force. Hate is a destructive force. And if you're a servant of Allah, then your life must be filled with love. And there's nothing weak about love. Because you look all throughout the Quran, you look through Muhammad's prophet's life, you see all the revolutions. They went to war even though they had love in their heart. Because there's a place where war must take place. But the first concern is that you execute love. Because I'm loving this great life that Allah will into existence. So we can't allow our lives to be filled and consumed by the diseases, the toxins of envy, of jealousy, of hate, right? Of greed. We also talked about the danger of greed. And sometimes you think that the greed is just for money, but sometimes one of the highest forms of greed is the greed for dominance, the greed for power over people. And for that kind of greed, people do anything. They have power over another human being. So the question Allah raised is, oh human being, what has seduced you? What force has skillfully went in motion that pulled you from your Rabb? From the one who's developing you, because he wants you to grow to become strong. So you can cleanse your system of greed, you can cleanse your system of arrogance, you can cleanse your system of bitterness, of the pain that has been consuming your life for 20 or 30 years. Where now you're in a position where now you want to inflict pain on other people because your life has been consumed by pain. That's why the Quran says it is as shifa, it is a healing. It is a healing for the disease, not in the heart of the believer, but in the heart of man, because the believer is not supposed to have no disease in his heart. You understand that? I'm not talking about no physical disease, that the believer shouldn't be walking around with a bunch of hate in his heart, because that hate will consume you. That believer should not walk around with envy and jealousy in his heart, because envy and jealousy are signs that you don't appreciate what Allah gave you and you wish you had what somebody else got. And you don't like them because they got what you think you should have. See, when Allah created you, He gave you what you would need. And when he created that other human being, he gave the other human being what they would need. So if you walk around with envy and jealousy in your heart, then you have to begin to look at how you look at Allah and his creation. Because when he wills something to existence, it is willed in existence with what it needs to live out its destiny. I hope you understand what I'm saying to you. So we talked about the disease that is in the hearts of human beings. Now, a big issue in America and probably all over the world, and it goes to a physical or emotional, sometimes physical, because once the body is addicted to things, it becomes a real problem to break addiction. Now we said that the believer shouldn't have no disease in their heart, then we know that Shaitan is working to put something in you. Because if you read the Quran, Allah said that Shaitan said that he will place false desires in the human being. They do it through food. Don't you know most of the food you eat continuously, as that food has been treated, they manufacture food like an assembly line. They manufacture food in a laboratory. And most of the unwholesome foods are heavily laced with chemicals that will make you addicted to the food, and then those chemicals begin to rob you of your life. Now, Shaitan's mission is to produce slaves. His mission is not to free you. He doesn't have the power to do that. His whole mission is to whisper, to pull you from the relationship that keeps you free. That's why from the very premise, when you declare your faith, you must say, Ashhadu an la. See, the first thing you have to say is you have to realize that you have to come to the awareness that you can say no. Because if you're not able to say no and to resist, then you become a slave. So from the very premise of you declaring your faith is not just a declaration of faith, it is a declaration of freedom. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. There's no force, there's no being, there's no power more worthy of your loyalty and your devotion other than Allah. So that's a declaration of not just faith, it's a declaration of freedom. That's why we gave the verse last week, and Allah said, and none will come to Allah except as a servant, Abd. And the highest position is Abdullah. Not a slave of things, but a slave of Allah. And you look around in society, you see people are enslaved and in bondage to alcohol and drugs and other things. I mean, it's so serious. Alcohol, gambling. I read the report where it says in America in 2016, $116.9 billion was spent in gambling. 116.9, I don't even know how to add that, $0.9 billion was spent on gambling. That's why Allah says about gambling, he said, look here, that right there, he said, that's Shaitan's handiwork. Gambling, he said, that right there is the heavy tool that breaks up those relationships. Let's read this verse here, because it's going back to the addiction. See, they're creating these addicts. See, when you create these addicts, then they're vulnerable. They're weakened. See, they've been weakened in the relationship with Allah, therefore socially they become weakened. And they're open for mass manipulation. But here's the verse. Allah says, "O you who believe, intoxicants and gambling, arrows are an admonition abomination, pardon me, abomination of Satan's handiwork. Eschew such abominations that you may prosper. Now look here, the verse ends. So I'll tell you about gambling and alcohol. Abomination. You ain't interested in that. Something that's abomination, you ain't interested in that. Then it goes on to say, Satan's plan is but to excite enmity and hatred between you with gambling and intoxicants, and to hinder you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Will you not abstain? Now the first verse, he starts talking about gambling, alcohol. It ends with Shaitan want to keep you from prospering. Because if you really consume in gambling, alcohol, you ain't really going to prosper. You ain't going to prosper in your soul, and your life going to be unstable. Burning your brain cells. Look at all that drugs have produced in America. See, it's a big problem now. See, I remember when drugs in America, see, it was African Americans' problem. See, they had a problem. They're weak. They're poverty-driven. They got a lot of violence. They come out of slavery. That's their problem. Now, when I turn on the news today, when I turn on the television today, I see over and over and over all these cases of we gotta deal with this opiate. We gotta deal with this drug. It's a big issue now. In almost every station, they got an advertisement for a treatment center, because now you begin to see it as a human problem. Before you saw it as that's their problem. But Allah already told you that if you're consumed with intoxicants and gambling, picking machines everywhere you turn. Almost every corner store you go to, liquor store, there's a picking machine. And broke people are trying to profit from picking on the picking machine. Some kind of way, then I got $1 in the dream, something gonna happen. Some win, but most don't. And I've seen them go on there literally hundreds of dollars, same numbers they've been playing for years. $1 in a dream, hoping that it comes through. But Allah says intoxicants and gambling is Satan's handiwork. So dislike such abomination that you may prosper. Because you have to be free, because when you start gambling with your life, you start gambling with your bills, you start gambling with your rent money, you start gambling with your food money. Don't you know the addiction is so deep that that's what people do? People have lost their businesses because of the addiction of the thrill that comes with gambling. And the kind of behavior some people display today, they can't be sober. Can't be sober. I look at the behavior and things people do, I said, he must be high. Because to do that, you almost got to be out of your mind. A sober person wouldn't do that. But Allah says, this is Shaitan handiwork, so dislike that, hate that you may prosper. The more people give into that, the short term. We're talking about the moral, the spiritual, the intellectual death. That's why we heard the call of one calling us to faith, and we believe stability. So the verse goes on, that Satan's plan is but to excite enmity and hatred between you with gambling and intoxicants, and to hinder you from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. Will you not abstain? Prayer is a big deal. There's a verse in the Quran that says, and you ask, the guilty will be asked. And what led you to prayer? Their response was, we were not of those who prayed. As simple as that is, it's powerful. Because the very purpose of the prayer, as this verse says, Shaitan works to hinder you from the remembrance of Allah. When you're hindered from the remembrance of Allah, you are open for anything. That's why you stop in the midday, you make your prayers a constant reminder of, I got this connection with Allah. I have this relationship with Allah. And when I have this relationship with Him, I realize the relationship I have with what He created. I have a relationship with people. I have a relationship with things. And then ultimately I have a relationship with myself, that I'm the master over my life. See, some people forget that idea. They forget the fact that you have mastery over your own appetites, over your own urges. So Shaitan skillfully works to hinder the human being from the remembrance of Allah and from prayer. So he says, will you not then abstain? See, it ends with a question. When you look at all the complexity that comes with gambling and intoxicant, not just alcohol, intoxicant, anything that befiles your mind that takes you out of a normal state. After you look at all that being Shaitan's tools, Allah says, will you not then abstain? See, and that's the good news we have to deliver to people. We have to deliver to people the news that you can be free. I ride down Freedom Avenue is nothing but bondage. That's not the way Allah created a human being to live. Allah created a human being to be free to express that life, not to be in bondage where that life is being oppressed. So we have to be as Muhammad the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have to deliver the good news. We have to be what is called Mubashir. You have to be the good news deliverer. See, people need good news. They hear bad news all day long. Most people got a story, some of the stories about pain, tragedy, depression. They need good news that you can do better, you can live. So we've heard the call of one calling us to Iman, and we believe. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. So we have to be the good news bringers, because that's what the world needs. The world needs good news. As I mentioned to you before, Shaitan's mission is to create slaves. So that's why Allah tells you are Abdullah, that you have to understand your identity. When you come into this world, you have to realize that you have an identity. And if you don't become aware of your identity, someone else will give you an ID. They'll give you an ID. This is who you are. That's why all the great philosophers ask the question, who are you? And if you don't know who you are, you don't know what to accept or what to reject. You have no reference of what support who you are. That's why we talked last week about, we talked the week before about Hanif. Ibrahim, we said we follow Milato Ibrahim, who Allah says was the upright. So here's an identification. His identification is, I'm the upright. I'm standing up in my own soul. I'm standing up as a man. I'm standing up as a dignified human being. I'm standing up with a human being who is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice for the pleasure of Allah. So you have to come to the awareness of who are you? And the highest position you can take is Abdullah. You can go no higher than identifying yourself as being a slave servant of Allah. See, if you identify yourself as being a slave servant of Allah, then all these other things won't penetrate your life. Because you came into the awareness when I declared this faith, when I consciously accepted this faith. That's why when you give Shahada, the witness, you say, Ashhadu. See, I bear witness. And lie. In saying I bear witness, I'm saying also I bear witness to the fact that I can resist oppression. And when you say la, that's what you said. I can resist oppression. I can resist these forces that are coming to break me down. That's what these forces do. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. You identify yourself again as being slave of Allah. So when you go into the world, you go into the world as a slave of Allah. You're not in bondage to anything. But if you have no identification of who you are, then you're vulnerable for the schemes of shaitan. That's why Allah says here in the Quran, "O you believe, when you meet a force, be firm and call Allah in remembrance much and often, that you may prosper." We're going back to prosperity. If you don't get the disease out your heart, you don't resist these urges, you don't resist shaitan's mission to put false desires in your body, these forces will come and these forces will move you from the connection you should have with the ultimate force in creation, who is Allah, Hadi Jumuah. So you got to identify yourself. Identification is so important. You start, any police officer pull you over, the first thing they ask is, let me see your license, insurance, and registration. I just need to make sure who you are, for whatever reason. But they want to ID. Is this your vehicle? Is this vehicle registered? You know, you might look like a suspect, but the point I'm making to you is the identification. Who are you? And the first thing you have to come into awareness of, outside of your physical ID, you have to ID in your soul, I am a slave servant of Allah. And I understand that Allah says, in His creation, He made me Khalifa. He made me the ruler and the manager in all this. That everything is under your charge. Now the believer especially need to become more aware of this. The believer particularly, because he's connected to Allah, he's constantly connected to creation, he's connected to people, he understands how to build these relationships. He understands he's in a community, that community reinforces that identification. That's what the community does. The community reinforces who you are. Because the community is supposed to remind you of who you are. You're a servant of Allah. You know, that's why the Prophet help your brother and sister, whether they right or wrong. You know, come on, let's get this a little tighter. That's why Prophet Muhammad says that the believer is the Muslim is the mirror to his brother. You know what that means right there? See, when you look in the mirror, you can see how you can improve who you are. You know, you might need to fix your hair, you might need to wash your face, you got something in your eyes. That's what the mirror is a reflection, so you can see how you can make adjustments. You might need to shape up your mustache. So the Muslim is the mirror. When I see you, I can see how I can make my life better. By looking at you, you're reminding me of who I am and who I'm becoming. That's what I was all about. Who are you becoming? He said, your Rabbah. So your Rabbah is the one who's helping you to become better, to become stronger, to become wiser, to become much more fulfilling. He's taking you from smallness and moving you towards greatness. That's Rabbah. But he says here in closing, when you meet a false believer, be firm and call Allah in remembrance much and often, that you may prosper. Because if you don't call Allah in remembrance, that's why the other verse says that shaitan want to hinder you from the remembrance of Allah in prayer. And some people may think that's small. That's big. Because if your life is not influenced by prayer, those other influences will be in your spirit. And salat don't take long. It's a mercy to Allah. You don't be praying for hours. It takes you a couple of minutes to make your salat. That's how merciful Allah is. And we should have enough discipline to be firm enough. No, let me check in. I want to check in and I want to plug in with Allah, because that's my ultimate strength. That's my ultimate reinforcement of that identification. Who are you? All right? When we get that down pat, we become firm when these forces come, because there's invisible forces that's working to break us down and literally kill. They're talking about kill you physically, we're working to kill you emotionally, you have no feelings. We're going to kill you intellectually, you have no interest in new information. We're going to kill you morally, you can't even make these adjustments between what is right and wrong. You're just morally dead. They also want to make you dead economically, that you're not even interested in building your community financially. They'll make you dead. That's his mission, to make you dead, to literally wipe you out where you are non-effective. But if you are aware of your identification, you can't accept that. See, once you become aware of your identification as being a slave, servant of Allah, you cannot accept death. Because you know to serve Allah is an expression of life. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. No, come.
Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, Qad qamatis salah, Qad qamatis salah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.
This is all this prayer, teaching, Hadi Jumuah, lillahi rabbil alamin.